They were teenagers, caught in a turbulent on again, off again relationship. He was a high school football player with a bright future. She was his girlfriend, who insisted they were just horseplaying. But one night, just 5 days before Christmas, that horseplay ended with a 4-inch blade buried in his chest. At 18 years old, Jahara Malik was sentenced to nearly 2 decades in prison for killing her 17-year-old boyfriend, Yakeem Lawler. But the judge added a haunting condition, an annual ritual she must perform, a constant reminder of the life she took. What was this condition, and why did the judge believe it was a necessary part of her sentence? Attack.
Blood on the grass won't wash away undetected footprint.
In Miami, Florida, 17-year-old Yakeem Lawler, known to friends and family as Chemo, was a football player at the renowned Miami Northwestern Senior High. His family remembers him as being full of life and promise. His mother, Natalie Jean, recalled a memory from the day he died. The family was putting up a pink Christmas tree, and Chemo walked in and jokingly sang along to a Mariah Carey song at the top of his lungs. It was a moment of ordinary joy that would soon be shattered. His life was entwined with Jahara Malik, also 17 at the time. Their relationship was described as volatile and turbulent. According to Yakeem's mother, her son had tried to end the relationship just 8 days before his death. This context would become a critical point in the legal battle that followed, painting a picture of a relationship that was far more complex than simple teenage romance. While her defense would later present a psychologist's opinion that she suffered from PTSD, depression, and anxiety, the prosecution would paint a very different picture. Prosecutors argued that Jahara had a history of violent outbursts. They presented allegations that on at least 3 separate occasions she had broken Yakeem's phone in a fit of rage. More chillingly, they claimed that she had once threatened an ex-boyfriend by telling him, "I want blood," and even chased Yakeem with a knife during a previous incident also described as horseplay. These allegations suggested a pattern, one that prosecutors argue led directly to the tragic events of December 20th. On the night of December 20th, 2024, in the parking garage of Yakeem's apartment complex in Miami's Little Haiti neighborhood, the couple's relationship reached its final conclusion. The initial story, the one Jahara Malik told police, was that they were horseplaying, a playful fight gone horribly, accidentally wrong. Her defense attorneys would later argue she was remorseful from the start, claiming she immediately called 911 and tried to perform life-saving measures. The 911 call captured a hysterical, screaming Jahara in court. Her lawyers pointed to the trauma in her voice as proof that the stabbing was unintended consequence. She told the court herself, "I was reckless. That knife should have never been out, and because of that, a life was lost." She claimed her first thought was not to run, but to try and save him. But the prosecution and the evidence they presented told a different story. They argued this was no accident. Surveillance video from the parking garage was shown in court, capturing the two running around a stairwell before disappearing from view. A police sergeant testified that just before the fatal moment, audio from the surveillance footage captured Yakeem saying, "Jahara, don't," or "Jahara, stop." The next time they are seen, Yakeem is on the ground bleeding from his chest. The physical evidence was even more damning for the defense. The weapon was a small kitchen knife with a pink handle and a 4-inch blade. The prosecutor, Kristen Rodriguez, argued in court with brutal clarity. That knife went at him with such force, it penetrated not only his hoodie, his shirt, his muscle, his fat, it clipped his rib and went directly into his heart. A police sergeant testified that the wound depth matched the blade's length, meaning the entire knife was pressed into his body. Prosecutors argued that this detail flew in the face of any claim of a simple accident during horseplay. Just after 11 p.m., paramedics found Yakeem with a knife wound to his chest. Despite their efforts, he died about an hour later. Jahara Malik was arrested in January of 2025 after the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office officially ruled Yaquim's death a homicide. At 17 years old, she was charged as an adult with manslaughter and carrying a concealed weapon. The prosecution's case rested on dismantling the horseplay narrative. They contended that her actions were not an isolated incident of recklessness, but the culmination of a pattern of aggression. The legal proceedings moved forward, and in March of 2026, Jahara, now 18, pled guilty to manslaughter. Crucially, this was not part of a pre-arranged plea deal with prosecutors. It was an open plea, which meant her fate rested entirely in the hands of Miami-Dade Circuit Court Judge Christine Hernandez. This set the stage for a dramatic and emotional sentencing hearing when two completely different versions of Jahara Malik and the night Yaquim Lawler died would be presented. The defense fought for leniency. They asked the judge to sentence Jahara as a youthful offender, a status that could have resulted in much shorter sentence in a boot camp style program focused on rehabilitation. Her attorneys argued she was devastated, remorseful, and that her actions were the result of negligence, not malice. They presented a psychologist who believed Jahara suffered from PTSD, depression, and anxiety, framing the stabbing as an isolated incident rather than a reflective pattern of delinquency or aggression. Yaquim's family, however, saw it very differently. His mother, Natalie Jean, stated she didn't believe the remorse was genuine, questioning why it took over a year for Jahara to take responsibility. The family, who had been vocal advocates for justice, pleaded with the judge for the maximum sentence, possibly 30 years in prison. The sentencing hearing in May of 2026 was a powder keg of emotion. The courtroom was packed with the families of the victim and the defendant sitting on opposite sides. 10 of Yaquim's loved ones delivered powerful victim impact statements. His father expressed his frustration, saying, "Man, I don't like the way this case was handled." His mother told the court, "She gave my son a death sentence." Perhaps the most searing words came from Yaquim's aunt, who looked directly at Jahara and said, "It will always be a fact that you are a murderer. You are a demon seed that your parents brought into this world to bring suffering on everybody else. Shame on them." The raw grief and anger were so intense the judge had to pause the proceedings multiple times. When it was her turn, a crying Jahara Malik addressed the court and Yaquim's family. "I was wrong for what I did, and every day I sit and think about the damages I caused," she said. "The family wants me in prison, but I'm in my own prison for the rest of my life." She spoke of her love for Yaquim, calling him her best friend, and expressed deep, irreversible regret. "Y'all don't deserve this pain, and I wish I hadn't been the one to give it to y'all," she concluded. The judge was faced with two irreconcilable narratives: one of a tragic accident fueled by youthful recklessness and remorse, another of a violent attack that was the foreseeable conclusion of a pattern of aggression. The families were worlds apart on what they believed was in the justice system compelling. Consider subscribing for more stories that explore the complex why behind the headlines. In the end, Judge Christine Hernandez had to weigh these competing truths. The prosecution had requested 20-year prison sentence, while the defense pleaded for the youthful offender program. The judge acknowledged Jahara's youth and stated that she believed she was remorseful. However, she ultimately denied the request for the lighter sentence. His life was taken way too soon. Your youth does not excuse the foreseeable consequences of the decisions you made. The choices that you made affected the trajectory of all their lives, the trajectory of your life as well as your family's. The judge explained that while Jahara would still have a life ahead of her, she had deprived Yaquim's family of that same future, and for that, they had to be punishment. Then came the sentence. Judge Hernandez sentenced Jahara Malik to 17 years in a Florida state prison, to be followed by 5 years of probation. But she added two unique conditions. First, Jahara must undergo a mental health evaluation and any necessary treatment. And second, she imposed a haunting annual requirement. You will have to write a letter December 20th of every year that you're on probation, the judge declared, acknowledging what occurred and how it has affected your life. This condition wasn't about retribution in the same way that prison years are. It was a sentence of forced reflection. For 5 straight years after her release from prison, Jahara Malik would be legally obligated to sit down on the anniversary of Yaquim's death and confront what she did. The yearly letter serves as a mechanism for accountability that extends beyond prison walls. A mandate to remember and acknowledge the life that was lost. It ensures that for Jahara, December 20th will never just be another day. It's a day of reckoning, a day for a letter, and a day to remember the high school sweetheart whose life she cut short in a parking garage, forever tying their stories together in tragedy.
Blood on the grass won't wash away. Undetected